Welcome to the Supreme Influence Show, the space to embody your infinite potential and fulfill your highest destiny. Hi, I'm Niurka, and I'm inspired to bring you this amazing episode. Today, we have a very special guest. He's a world-renowned macro-economist with a timely message. Right now, we're in the midst of an unprecedented time in history, a global shutdown in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And my guest is an expert in the economic recovery and rebuild in light of COVID-19. If you've been feeling uncertainty about the future or about the economy, your family, your finances, your businesses, in light of these challenging events, you're gonna love this episode. Our guest, Zane Pilzer, is a macroeconomist who has advised top government officials and CEOs worldwide. He's served as an appointed economic official in 2 U.S. White House administrations. He's an entrepreneur who's founded 5 companies in publishing, technology, commercial real estate, finance, and health benefits. He's employed thousands of people, invested in dozens of startups, and served on multiple boards of directors. He's a professional speaker, an adjunct professor at NYU, a writer, a New York Times best-selling author with 11 books, and he's a dear friend. I'm blessed to have known Paul for over 20 years. I met him when I was 19 years old, and Tony Robbins and I and a few others went to his home in Park City, Utah, and we all went skiing and just had a wonderful time. And Paul and I hit it off immediately. We enjoyed profound, stimulating conversations, and we became friends. He mentored me in my early years in economics. I share this story in my book, Supreme Influence, recounting how in high school, I remember my economics teacher defining economics as the distribution of scarce resources. Think about that definition, scarce resources? But Paul confirmed the wisdom that I felt in my heart. And he wrote about it in his book, Unlimited Wealth, where he debunked traditional economic theories on scarcity and offered a new theory called economic alchemy, based on abundance. He revealed how our world contains unlimited resources because our creativity, ingenuity, and exponential technologies empower us to continually evolve and define new resources and discover even better ways to use our existing resources. I'm inspired to bring you Paul's wisdom on today's episode. It was recorded during a Saturday morning video chat where I invited a small group of friends to join me in this conversation with Paul and ask a few questions. Keep in mind that things are changing fast, and even though this is the case, this information offers you profound insight. So let's dive in. Hi, Paul. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for getting up this Saturday morning. I'm Zane Pilzer, obviously. What we're looking at here is, first, everybody will always remember, just like you were if you're American when Kennedy was shot. You will always remember where you were when 9/11 hit. And this is that moment, if not larger already, because this event has an immediate impact on everybody's behavior in life, belief system. It's like any other world apocalyptic event, but it's bigger. And unfortunately or fortunately, it doesn't have an exact start date. It's a date different for each of us. For some people, it's the day they got home, logged on their securities account and found 2/3 of their 401k gone. And that was just that day or that week because they hadn't looked at it. And then they go, oh my God, what it was like each day, and they start focusing. For some, it's 2:13 p.m. yesterday for me, March 20th. I had an event. I had been locked into prayer because I had a very sick son who's still very sick, and it looked like he had COVID. And he has really bad pneumonia, and he's got the later stage of not doing really well in this. I don't know why I'm choking up now, because the good news before I get to it is at 2:13 p.m. I got the notice that my 15-year-old son tested negative for COVID. And we went through hell just getting it tested because we sent in tests, they lost the test. And then they finally have a new state lab that was doing the test 3 days ago. I live in Utah, not California. What happened to the state lab? It got hit by an earthquake. An earthquake The first one we've ever had of any monumental thing since living people moved into Utah happened 3 days ago. And it happened on the day they were testing my son's thing. So they not only canceled the test for COVID, I'm just sorry to go off on this, this is emotional to say it. They not only canceled the test, somebody looked at it and said, he's 15 years old, he's gonna live. So they canceled his test, even though they didn't tell him that there were whole schools and other people he had been with who wanted to know right away if he had COVID. And we tried 3 days of hell trying to get him tested. So he did another test at the hospital, and we're back and forth to the hospital to get him on a ventilator to keep him breathing. And the second test got tested, and guess what? It was positive, being negative. It was a negative test. I've got it framed on my wall here. I remember that paper forever. So all of us are about to have, if you haven't already, monumental epochal events that we're going to remember all our lives from what happened here. And that's what we're going to discuss here. My expert field of, let's say, expertise within this, I'm a macroeconomist. I like to think of myself as an entrepreneur. I've done 5 businesses today, about $1 billion. Before today, before this month, about a $1 billion market cap. But more significantly, I like writing books. I have 11 books, and I like teaching. And I focus on the larger economy. And particularly within the economy, my expertise is probably the banking system. I was very involved in helping fix the savings and loan crisis. And I wrote my first book, Other People's Money, in 1989, which was really about the S&L crisis. And no one appreciates how close we came to the banking system not working, which is what we're having right now. Most of my calls like this, all of us have a brain trust. I think I've got about 7 of these going. And I learned something from every one. So that's why I'm looking forward to learning from you. But each brain trust, most of them are financial or banking oriented, based on my old expertise, or not, or I hope today's expertise, and how a banking system works. First thing I did, which I'll tell you to do, is do not go out of your house without $500 or $1,000 cash. Don't, because you will slide that credit card and it will not work. Now, it won't work because somebody's being tested for COVID or taking care of his son like I was doing the last 5 days. And that person didn't go to work. So the information that went from the Square account in your merchant where you were buying coffee, down a line or a chain till it gets to the bank that says, yeah, you're good for the $30, pay the $30. Something's going to break in that chain. And then we'll go get a guy to fix it. But the guy who fixes it may be out on COVID for whatever reason, or taking care of someone.
Now, what is the probability of that, Paul? Because like when you say it almost like that's what's going to happen.
Well, it's happening. It's 100%. The question is whether it happens to you. Our banking system is depending on people getting up and going to work. When those people don't get up and go to work and don't release things, you reach limits and someone looks at the credit card and says, pass the limit. There's unlimited people. I used to work at Citibank in the card business, and I've helped regulate this business most of my life on the federal government. And so you don't see it because there's redundancy and there's someone to back it up. So you probably have always had your credit card work if you had money in it. Or you're used to moving money and it's instant, even though it always says can wait up to 24 hours, but it doesn't. It goes right away. Some of that's not going to work all the time. It'll get fixed, I hope. I mean, I believe it'll get fixed, so the system really collapsed. But the point is, it doesn't hurt to have cash. And everything my father taught me, my father was born in 1903. He never finished high school, but he obviously lived through the Depression as a business person, an entrepreneur in 1930, 1935. And he wouldn't let me out of the house without cash. And I would say, Dad, I don't need the cash. I got this new credit card you got me. He wanted me to have cash because he was afraid something would happen in the car. I need to buy gasoline. But all these lessons I learned from my father, which he was obsessed with the Depression, and my mother, all these lessons are coming back to me in spades now, combined with a fairly technical background in how banking systems works and clear. So we don't spend that much time, just carry a few $100s cash. What I do if my daughter just happened to her, she was trying to buy gasoline and she didn't have enough money and she needed cash. I said, go in your Subaru, lie on the floor in the passenger seat, and you'll see I taped a $100 bill inside the glove box on the upper part of the glove box, which she'd never see and spend because you got to get on the floor and look up to see it. And she said, when did you put that there? I said, 1.5 years ago when we bought the car, when you haven't had to use it. Now you need some cash. She was very happy to have it. So I'm pointing out all these little things my father taught me are becoming very relevant. And more significantly, we got to in this call, my field of expertise, honestly, is the recovery and the stabilization at the bottom. I'd love to tell you I have some biological knowledge, and I certainly read everything we all do in this meeting of what is COVID, how long it's going to last. I don't know if I have anything more to say about that than anyone else. What I do have to say, and we should keep the questions on, is what are some of the emergent things like running out of your debit cards not working that may happen? How low the economy may go. More significantly, and most of it, is really what the recovery looks like. I find it interesting. I'm a lot better today as a dad and as an economist with a son, not out of danger, but out of COVID. So I'm in a better mood. But meanwhile, I've been on all these calls with CEOs mainly of banks and financial regulators. And most of these calls I'm focused on, they want my expertise of how we get out of this. Once we hit rock bottom, how do we rebuild? And where's it going? Now with that said, I'll tell you, and then I do want to get to questions. That said, I want to talk to the more positive side. If there are people who want to make money, and I'm not sure, I don't want to sound terrible now that somebody is here to make money. Right now, everybody's thinking of who's getting sick and how we keep them alive. But that will change. We will solve this problem. I do believe this is almost like God, not God decreeing the world should end, but God firing a shot over our bow to say, if I want to, I can eliminate you. But I'm not going to eliminate you because I love the world, says God, or whatever higher being you believe in. And this is a shot over the bow that says, wake up and hug somebody more and be more loving. And frankly, Niurka, you're much better at that than me. So,
well, that's what we're seeing right now, Paul. I'm seeing that in the conversations I'm having. People are returning to really being present to what's most essential, what's most important. And really, it's kind of like a recalibration of our entire world as old paradigms are kind of like crumbling, that creates the space for new births.
And that's exactly what's going on. And that's your field, not my field. My field is there are people who are going to want to, some people who are going to want to make a lot of money, or at least rebuild the money they had that they felt secure with. And this is going to make any economic opportunity ever in the history of the world pale by comparison. Because our growth, when we recover, most recoveries are a U. And that U means it hits the bottom of the U, and then it starts climbing up and climbing up. And as it climbs, it gets steeper because you get near the top. That's not what's going to happen here. It's going to be a V overnight. When it hits bottom, it's going to go straight up. It's not even going to have a chance to U and start building a momentum because we know what we're rebuilding. We know what we had before. Some things we like, some didn't. Unlike an economy that says we have more money, what should we spend it on? Where should we live? We know where we want to live. We know who we want to love. We know all these things, and we just want to get back there right now. And that's the positive side. Our growth will be unbelievable growth. My expertise started in the oil crisis when we were running out of resources. We're certainly not running out of any physical resources. And we're going to need more love and more direction of what we want. But all the assets to go rebuild the economy are going to be staring us right in the front, right in the face from what we need in terms of what we know we want to build and how to build it. It's sort of like we have the blueprints, we already built it. Now we're going to rebuild it, meaning our economy or some of it, but at an incredible fast speed. So that those of us who had lost something probably have knowledge and expertise that came with getting the money to have it get lost in the first place. And that knowledge and expertise is going to come to us in spades as this economy roars. It's interesting to me how this happened. I've spent a year now writing a book called The New Roaring 20s, 2020 to 2029. And in The New Roaring 20s, it explains how our economy is going to grow at unbelievable rates, but so will unemployment. And The New Roaring 20s, that's probably, I'll tell this story and then we'll jump open to questions. So in The New Roaring 20s book, which is so applicable now, the economy starts out in 2020 at $20 trillion, which is where it is. And I apologize, there's some people here from outside the US. I'm going to use just US numbers. It's ones I'm more familiar with, but you can prorate them to any EU country and certainly to Canada. So we had in my new book, The New Roaring 20s, I said in January 2020, we started out with a $20 trillion GDP, and we're going to race that up to 30 trillion in 9 years. And then it goes through chapter by chapter what the sharing economy is, all the different areas of the economy and why that's happening. and why the Roaring Twenties, which had the same growth rate, by the way, the Roaring Twenties, meaning 1920 to 1929, had a 50% growth in the economy in 9 years. And I'm saying that we're going to duplicate, but from a much larger base. And I've been focusing on the various aspects of the economy. A lot of this is based on John Maynard Keynes, the greatest economist of the world, who established the science of economics. And Keynes wrote a letter in 1927 called Letter to My Grandchildren. And in that letter, the world's greatest economist said, children, grandchildren, here's what the world will look like 100 years from now. Or actually, it's 99 years from now. I won't be around, but I want you to have my prediction. And what he predicted was that by 2028, which was 100 years hence, 100 years ago today, that's 8 years away. By 2028, he said, we are going to be so rich as an economy due to technology doing all our work, and so rich as individuals, that only 1/3 of the population will work. And on average, that 1/3 that chooses to work will work 15 hours a week, which might be one long day at 15 hours, playing around the country, or it might be 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. And that minimal amount of work, 15 hours a week plus only 1/3 of the population working, will produce all the food, shelter, music, art, everything else you want. The rest of us will just consume and enjoy and couple off with somebody who does work. The opportunities for somebody who wants to make money will be unlimited because not many people will want to work. They'll want to just enjoy. And we were heading towards that very quickly with millennials changing needs. And really, I've been very excited about the book. The publisher's been lining up to bid. And all of a sudden, we changed something. Think of the world BC and AD. What does that mean to you? When I say BC, before Jesus Christ, and regardless of what religion you are, I mean, I'm Jewish, whether you be Muslim, Christian, BC is a big date. The day that Jesus Christ was born has the biggest impact, I might argue, on the civilized world, or the world we know. And then we have a new world called AD, which in Latin means after the event. We have that right now. We have the Roaring Twenties, we're right in the middle, and it breaks right here into before coronavirus, BC, and AC, after coronavirus, because everything changes. Now, I'll argue that all those changes were in the works. That's what I've been writing about for 2 years, studying the last year, studying millennials. But they were going to happen over a decade. They now might happen over 1, 2, 3 years once we start to rebuild our economy. So we're all going to think of the world. Someone will say, oh, you're telling me about when you went to that restaurant. Was that BC or was that AC? Is that after coronavirus? Because the restaurant we know is going to be different, or before coronavirus. And you start to see how we're going to see in the next few years an epochal event where everybody's going to know where they were AC and BC. They're going to know where it started for them. For almost everybody, it started in March, but it's a little different. As I said, for me, it's the date, the big date that my son didn't have coronavirus. For so many people, it's where they lost their money. For so many people, it's when their grandfather died of COVID, and we're not done with that. I mean, some really tough things happening. But BC and AC is going to be the big item. And what my expertise is, that I'd like to say I have something to contribute, is AC. After coronavirus hits and it bottoms out and it's solved medically, because I'm not the guy who's going to solve it medically, nor do I have a lot to say on that. When that happens and we start to rebuild, the world's going to be different. And the world's going to have enormous amount of economic opportunities because it's going to grow like a V, not like a U. And if you don't fully understand that, that would be a good question. So with that, Niurka, let me stop looking at my notes, which is a whole book worth, and turn to whoever, turn it back to you, and we can run this thing interactively now.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Paul. Damien, I know you always got some good questions.
I'm definitely interested in your thought processes around how you perceive the technology moving sector-wise, and what you perceive people are going to be focused on.
Your area is probably the same as any technological entrepreneur, if I'm reading what you do.
Yeah.
All the product you produce is produced basically as a function of new technology and how well and how fast you and your cohorts use it.
Correct.
And if I'm reading that correctly, whatever was the speed or trajectory for adopting new technology, it's going to be much greater right now. It's going to be greater because initially you're going to want vendors to do things. This is the bad news, and they're not going to be there. or they're going to, hey, I used to have an operator who did this part of my video on my machine, but he, I don't want to skip, might be he's sick taking care of somebody because of COVID. I mean, the initial thing of you're going to try to do business, it's going to be very rough because we're at the bottom. We're not at the bottom yet, but we'll be at the bottom of our economic cycle waiting for recovery. Meanwhile, on the other side, let's call it BC, about all this different technology and different pieces and different machines you were ready to implement. I call those an RIT, a ready to be implemented, implemented technological advance, an RIT. And in any business I walk into, I said again, BC, a month ago, I walked into an auto plant and I said, I could go to any company in America, auto plant or your business, and sorry to say this, fire half the people, and with a little bit of pain or energy, rebuild the whole company. Where the people left would do all the work. And most people don't like to admit that because it admits they were 50% bloated. But let's not use the word bloated. They were employing people who didn't need to be employed just economically, meaning you could get rid of them and someone could do their job or bring in a new technology. And I see that in every restaurant. I see that in every process. I'm an economist. I walk into businesses and I say, wow, the RITs, ready to be implemented technological advances that we could bring to this business, starting with, if it's a restaurant, why do they take your credit card, reserve the money? Why do they take your credit card, reserve the money, and then this pending stuff, they should come right to your table and slide it on their hip as you've seen them do. And that saves a whole person back at the counter in a lot of restaurants who are running the cash register. I can go on and on that all this technology was there ready to be implemented. When you rebuild your business, when your customers say, I need this and this and this and this, they're not going to want it in a day, they're going to want it that day. And you're going to rebuild your technology, I'm sorry to say this, of who you're going to keep employed, who you're not going to keep. And it's going to be like the shot in the arm and your excuse to say, I'm trying out a new machine, I'm doing it differently. Because no one likes to do things differently. Now everyone knows to rebuild, we're going to have to do things a little differently. So the massive amount of technology, whatever the speed I was writing about that a businessman like you would have implemented these things over 6 months, it's going to be 6 weeks or 6 days. Very, very quickly. And you're also going to find, just because we're going to be in recovery mode, that all the vendors who supply this stuff are not worried about, they're just worried about sales price exceeding marginal product cost. They just want to get a little bit of money, not to make profit right now, but to cover their costs to get it out there. So in effect, we're rebuilding so quickly in every area when we start to rebuild. And we're going to rebuild with new technology that will get to Keynes's 2028, maybe in 2023, or some number. And I'm using these just relative because we're going to get to the point where I was writing about where the economy is basically consumers and people enjoying lifestyle and less than a third of the people are working.
We were clear that this was going to ramp up. And I'm also clear about what you said, that the technological boom and where teams that used to require, 5,000 people to punch out, the CGI or the renderings for massive games or movies, it's going to reduce to 500 people, and then that's going to reduce to 50. And that's happening as we speak. So I'm in agreement with your curve, or your V rather.
Thank you. Brittany?
Good morning. Hi, Paul. Nice to meet you. Thank you so much for your insights. And I would love to hear from you kind of your perspective on how you're seeing this impact not only the US economy, but the global economy, and what's going to happen with some of these other countries that we have trade with and do business with.
Let's try to analyze that. One of the things that really upsets me as a student whose parents were born outside the US and came here as refugees. And I grew up, my wife spent her first 6 years in a Malaysian refugee camp. She's Vietnamese, and then came here as a refugee in the United States. So we're very open to a worldview. That said, the US is going to emerge from this, unfortunately, so much stronger. And to a very great deal, the U.S. strength will be, it's heard me, I'm hesitating saying this, but I believe it, is going to be at the expense of many other nations. Almost like in an evil war, we had conquered another nation and then we strip out its resources. What's happening right now is we are dealing with an environment in Washington of negative interest rates. And a negative interest rate means that somebody shows up on Friday. The way we finance our deficit each year, or our government, is on a given Friday morning, the present executive branch of government, Treasury Department, needs, say, $90 billion to make it through the week, because that's what we're spending in excess of what we're taking in taxes for the United States. So they take the 90 billion and they create a treasury bond, treasury bond. Some are 30 days, some are 60 days, 90 days, 1 year, 10 year. And they take the 10-year bond and they go, who wants to get $1 million in 10 years paid at the window of the treasury, US dollars? Somebody says, I want that. So I'll give you 9,900,000. It'll grow in interest from 9,900,000 over the 1 week or the 1 year or whatever the time to 10 million. And that's how we figure out what the interest rate is. And that's what we call the 10-year treasury rate. That's normal. And normally somebody says, I bid 9,000,009, and somebody says, no, I'll buy that piece of paper for 9,000,091. The next guy says, I'll take a little less interest, 9,000,092. So the more you spend, the less interest you get. The difference between the 1 million and the 995,000 you pay is the interest. Now, what's so scary is people are flooding to the US to bring us their capital. And after COVID has done with its rampages in so many other countries, there's no longer a guy in Indonesia who's built a business, employs 300 people, and has $5 million in the bank. He's taken that 5 million and he's run to the United States. And he showed up on Friday at the Treasury window, but another guy showed up from Venezuela. He thought they were going to go Democratic. He thought this only risk was political. And Venezuela might not have the systems or the breakdown in law and order, which is going to come in a lot of these countries and in all parts of the world. So what we're seeing is the money, which is really, think of the money as the seed corn. Every spring you have corn you put away each year, every year as a farmer, your seed corn that you're going to plant the next spring so you have it next year. These people aren't planting seed corn. They're converting it to cash and running with it to the United States in some way. That props up our economy and devastates their economy. And that's been going on now going on forever, the last, really since 9/11. To some extent, the rest of the world brings its capital to the US, and they bring us more than their money capital, they bring us their human capital. You know, what is the first bright kid, when the lights go out, meaning when the cameras are off? I do a lot of work in China. My Chinese host always leans to me, almost everyone, and say, so Professor Pilzer, where should I send my kid to college and buy a house in the US? And these are hot, top-level Chinese officials, but they've gone through hell in their generations and back, and they want to have a safe place in the US. Well, now everybody wants a safe place in the US. And we see this where we have foreign nationals just the last decade buying empty, huge apartments and houses to just own in the US, not so much as investment, which is what they call it, but as a place to go run to if things go bad. Well, now they're going to stampede. So what's going to happen is the US will not only grow, as I'm working on now, AC after coronavirus, out of this Great Depression, which is what we're hitting. And I need to comment on depression and recession in a minute. The US will grow that. It will grow at the expense. Canada, by the way, will absolutely grow the same way.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Canada, because we've been doing quite a bit of business in Canada. What is your economic?
Canada's going to be like the US. It's safe, it's politically stable. So if you start thinking, socialism is bad, communism is bad, we got to fight that. The last country to go is probably the US, the second to last is Canada. And in Canada, we seem to have a population that's very stable, and most important, law and order. The scariest thing I saw before I came here, remember, I'm supposed to be here only on the positives. I'm here to help you AC after coronavirus has bottomed out and how we grow. But it will grow mainly because the US and Canada will be in a unique position because of political stability. One factor I saw about an hour ago that opened up on the news was that every day policemen in Los Angeles pull people over and they arrest 300 people a day. That's normal.
It's gone down to like 60 now.
Yeah, 60, exactly the number. You watch the same piece I did. That's the headline today. And it's not that the crime's not being committed. They put out a new guideline that says if somebody steals from somebody, don't arrest them. We don't have places for them. If they beat someone up and they're in danger of beating someone up else again, because it's not a crime of passion, but a crime against somebody, you probably need to bring them in. But 1/5 in one day or in 2 days, And so what we're seeing is
now we can also say though that maybe some of those arrests weren't like the most legit.
I would agree, but to go from 300 arrests to 60, there's a lot going on. And more important is not the arrests or how we're prosecuting, is a breakdown in law and order when money stops flowing. I mean, the real issue is we've all gone to the supermarkets and seen the bare shelves, but every time I've gone, I found something to buy. I literally found, wasn't my brand, it didn't what I liked, but it was a new brand of this or disinfectant or any soap, laundry detergents. You're trying brands now. You're just grabbing it. You're grateful to get it. What's going to happen when there's nothing there? Now, right now, they're doing a great job letting the supermarkets stay open and ignoring COVID right now and saying it's more important people get food. But I don't know how that's going to end up handling. But I don't like going there, but because it's not what I say it, but it's going to be rough till we get to the bottom. But in the clues of how we get to the bottom, we're going to see what our recovery is going to look like faster. And mostly Canada is what I call politically stable. I've always felt that all the immigrants I've known going to Canada in my life quickly became Canadians. They're all from all over the world, but they get it real quickly. The US used to be like that when I grew up. But in the last 20 years, I've seen more and more immigrants come and stay more as immigrants than, whereas the speed of assimilation was faster. I'm 66. So when I grew up, my English was not the language spoken in my home, but we assimilated real quick. And my parents would always say when I walked in the room, not in front of the kinder in Yiddish, meaning don't talk German or Yiddish in front of the kids because God forbid they might not speak perfect English. And that hasn't been the case. The point is, we've got the seeds of discontent to sow, unfortunately, in the US, but we've got a much less in the US and Canada than in other countries.
What about Europe? Emmanuel, who's here with us, who creates amazing documentaries. He's from France.
I think on the contrary, AC is going to be a different planet where we're going to see an emergence of spiritual leaders. And when I say spiritual, it's from spiritus, from the new breath, the oxygen that people are lacking of right now. And people are tired of this you versus me thing. It's going to be a we world. It's going to basically finally put in reality and perspective the beautiful test lab that was the United Nations. We, the people, are the united planet. And I think what is going to happen is an emergence of a united world where everybody's going to realize, you know what, you might have these resources, we don't. You might have these labs, we don't. These energies, we don't, and vice versa. And people are going to finally move toward a different world. It will be different. It will be different because we're going to have an emergence of new leaders, I guarantee.
Emmanuel.
Okay, please, Paul.
I certainly share, your enthusiasm and one world, but it's, how would I say this? Not my issues, like not what I do. I'm an economist. So let's come back to the first thing you said, which I vehemently disagree with. The US borrows 23 trillion, of which is such a ridiculous number because half of that or more is borrowed from itself. It's borrowed from other agencies within the government. So we got to knock it down to like a 10 or 12 trillion. Compare that to before coronavirus, a $22 trillion GDP. What matters is not the size of your mortgage on your home. What matters is the monthly payment. Interest rates in the US have just gone from 4%, 3% 10-year treasuries down to 0.4. And they're going to stay less than 1, I believe, for a long time. So in effect, the US just got a 4-fold reduction in debt service, 5-fold, maybe 100-fold if we stabilize at 0.1%. And where's that coming from? It's coming from people outside the US pouring capital in the US. Because for all their worries, they'd rather have it in US dollars than any other item. And that's what bids up the price of the treasury bill, which drives down the interest rate. Because we've seen this anyway going on for a decade, but never like we have in the last week. So the debt service is very easy for the US to meet. And unlike normal debt, this isn't debt backed by gold. This isn't like the Chinese, if we don't pay them their $1.5 trillion back, they sail in warships. We just print it and give it to them. And guess what? When you print 20% more money, all the existing money worth 20% less. That's fine for them. So we have no real risk of our debt. And I've been right about that since the 1980s in the Reagan administration, when everyone said when interest rates hit 20%, they were going to go to 30 and collapse the economy. And I said 1980s, and I've made a career of 40 years saying that, it's going to go to 0. And I used to say that as a euphemism. I thought maybe 1%, 2% down from 20. Well, it went down to 3, 4 and stayed there for the last 3 decades. And lately been heading lower and lower, primarily due to overseas people giving us more and more money. But right now, the debt service is meaningless for the U.S. debt. And again, it's debt relative to your ability to pay it. We still make most of the products in the world that they need to keep their farms running, keep their trains running. We talk about China manufacturing everything, but a lot of this stuff, if not half of it, comes from U.S. companies. And those companies are going to emerge with after coronavirus and sell the world. China is going to tool up faster to return their economy. But unfortunately, their economy is making things. They were in the process over the next 5 years, starting this year, of shifting to a consumer economy where their people enjoy more of their wealth themselves. China is going to make all these things, and how fast are you going to buy a new 80-inch big screen TV? Tesla's got
the money to buy it. That's the problem.
Exactly. Tesla's got a new plant in China. How fast are you jumping to buy that new Tesla, or you want to wait a few months? So China is going to be fully recovered the fastest of any nation, but they have a manufacturing economy that is highly dependent on workers having money in other countries. And that's not looking like that's going to happen overnight, at least today. The question really to answer the everything is, today's March 21. What's it going to look like on March 31? Because that was the date that my companies, Planet Fitness gyms, different things I'm involved in, we closed 2,000 gyms, 15 million US members. And we closed on roughly March 17th and said, we'll reopen March 31. That's still the plan. And I can go company by company. March 31 is a magic date that they told their stockholders and customers they're reopening. I don't know if they're going to reopen March 31. The news certainly has gotten worse since March 18th. Here we are in March. It's unbelievable how fast it is. The news since March 18th, when we closed our gyms at Planet Fitness, is much worse today on March 21. And we made on March 18th a projection that we'd reopen for 15 million Americans to have a gym to go work out and get rid of their tension on March 31. I don't know when that date is. I'm not going to speculate when it is, but it's probably longer than March 21. And that applies to every company doing the furloughs. Certainly the larger companies are doing great. They're saying we're closing till March 31. We will pay salaries till then. They have to, because they have all that these companies is the technical expertise of their employees. If their employees just go to the other company or the competitor, they don't have any way to reopen on March 31. So right now they're paying people. We don't know what's going to happen on March 31. If they think it's April 15th, they'll probably keep paying people to keep them around on April 1st. But if they don't think it's going to reopen, in other words, everything today relies back to a medical projection you make of when is it going to be safe to have gatherings of more than 10 or 50 in a place, and when we lift these government restrictions. And
that's an unknown right now.
Totally unknown. And I think from a religious standpoint, because I don't believe in the end of the world here, it's going to come. Meaning there's going to be a date when coronavirus doesn't win and COVID-19 does not stop everybody from working and socializing. But that day, no one knows when that day is now. And it literally could be 2 or 3 days. I mean, the split, as long as I'm focusing, to me is there's 2 ways to fight this thing. It's stop contagion with quarantines, whatever, which right now has worked in China, God bless them. And their political system allowed them to do that. Or let contagion go, develop herd immunity, and everybody who gets it have a cure. Have something that cures the disease or treats the symptoms and keeps them alive. I look at type 2 diabetes. When you look at overweight people and type 2 diabetes, a subject I've written 4 books about, they didn't have this problem when I was growing up. And the first thing I asked my biology friends, why wasn't everybody so overweight and dragging around all this weight and unhealthy when I grew up? Where were they? He says, Paul, they used to die. They used to have heart attacks, or they used to very quickly die. We've come up with all these drugs to treat type 2 diabetes that almost like leading a lamb to slaughter, we keep them alive. We don't tell them to lose weight and get healthy and work out. We tell them, here are these drugs that'll keep you alive. And I don't know where we're going to end up on COVID, but it's going to be driven by the medical biology, not by the economics. My field, again, is once we have a start date, coming up with the projections and the numbers. The recovery, as the economy is today, is not going to be a rising tide lifts all boats. So if you've got a business that was running It's not going to go, oh, the recovery comes the V and I just go up like the V. We're going to completely retool what fashions we want, what foods we eat, how we get to the restaurant. Everybody's going to be open to a new method. And so when we recover, certain companies are going to recover really fast and instantly. And certain of them are going to never recover, and certain are going to take a lot longer. But it's not going to be like we normally see an economic cycle. You go like this, and people say, I was in the Great Depression, I was in the recession, it goes up, it goes down. No, the rebuilding of the economy will have massive amount of winners and losers based on everything in every industry changing. Because people coming back to work are going to put on a new hat and say, how do I want to do this? As I talked about with Emmanuel, I think initially, about his technology and the new technologies, he's already thinking of what he's going to implement.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a new reset. And with death, we know always comes rebirth, is the nature of existence, new beginnings. When do you think the market's going to bottom? At what level, and what industries are going to come out on top?
Well, the biggest thing is, when is it going to bottom is going to be, when are we going to stop COVID-19's effects? So when are we going to have gatherings of people? And when are we going to have people able to return to work? And keep in mind, one of the things that worries me is in certain companies and certain places, well, let's take Planet Fitness gyms. In most, we as a company made a decision to close the gyms. That said, 20 states simultaneously, before we even could make it, closed us. Gyms are not allowed to be open. That means there's a government bureaucrat there who probably made a good move closing them. I got to go find him. I got to talk to him when we're ready to reopen. And he's going to err on the side of caution. He's going to say, sorry, I'm not ready, or I'm really busy and I only work till 4 p.m. I'm a government bureaucrat and I don't want to take the risk. So talk to me next month. Meanwhile, a couple 100,000 people stay out of work and 15 million people don't get their gym for $10 a month. And the gym business returns to a bad business it was, which was 3-year contracts and $50 a month for everyone instead of Planet Fitness serving people at $10 a month. In other words, but then in other states, the state did not close us down. So we can make an intelligent decision. We can retool workout procedures so we think we're safe medically, get a clean bill of health, and just open. Now, so you asked me a question. When would the gym business return, Paul? You're an active player in the gym business. You're right about it. I don't know. The biggest thing is which states in the U.S. have outlawed gyms, and how are they going to turn them back on?
And let me give another example of that. I just talked to my banker, and he said that he's been flooded with requests for lines of credit. And one industry specifically was, he said that the dental industry is going to be shut down until about at least June. So the amount of dentists that they have going to banks right now looking for lines of credit has completely spiked, unlike anything they've seen.
For some reason,
that's one particular industry.
I have dear friends who are billionaires in the dental supply business, and they're talking to me about all their supply chains. And one of them got a call from France that said, just give me every order you had in China, every monthly supply. I'll cut the price 20% and make it in France. He says, don't even bother calling me up. Give me the chemicals, give me the orders, give me the Chinese documents. And he just wants to get France back to work. And he's making a good decision to make sure and if China cuts the price, he says, I'll cut that price. This is a French pharmaceutical chemical manufacturer. In other words, there's going to be some serious competition and serious changes in the supply chain everywhere. And that's going to lead to is some companies are going to go up and some going down. And it's the microeconomists, not me. I'm a macroeconomist. The microeconomists who can study each individual business. Right now, for example, what's going on with unemployment? Companies, the CEOs are stepping up. First thing I saw last week was every CEO I could see in the news started out with, I am halving my salary effective today. And you feel that everywhere. And now they're going to, I am at zero salary. Why? Because their employees are at zero. The company that lays off the fastest and goes to zero employees has the highest EBITDA because they still have sales in their supply chain from things that are already made. And that company's stock goes up the highest. The company that doesn't do that and tries to act compassionate doesn't have a stock as a currency to go raise more money at and build out. It's kind of terrible right now. And the hourly workers are all going to be massively cut in my mind in 2 days, 8 days. I mean, the bad things that are happening. That said, all this will be driven by biology. We could still open Planet Fitness on March 31, like we told everyone we planned to a week ago, if we get the COVID virus under control, either by stopping contagion, communicating it, or finding a cure for those who have it, or a combination of both.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of this episode. I'm intending that you received profound value. I know that I did. And I'm excited to have you join us for part 2, where we're going to continue the conversation and you're going to receive even more insights into the recovery and the rebuild in light of COVID-19. Please be sure to share this episode with your friends, your family, your team, your loved ones, your community, because everyone can benefit from this wisdom and this knowledge. I am so excited to see you on part 2.